Welcome into Box Office Quarterbacks. Me and Gerald back at it again. This time to do something a little bit different. Gerald, we are going to have a nice discussion on the superhero genre that we love so much. And if people are actually falling out of love with it, is superhero fatigue a real thing? Or is everyone just kind of blowing shit out of proportion? So I want to start with you. We saw Shazam over the weekend only make $30 million. Everyone's kind of in a panic. But what do you think of the state of superhero movies right now?
I do think there's a little bit of fatigue, but I think it's unwarranted fatigue. I understand what people see these movies coming out 4 or 5 times a year now, and it's getting hard to follow with all the different worlds and universes and everything. I could see how that's a thing, but at the same time, um, all of this content we're getting is actually pretty damn good content. I mean, imagine if this stuff was the stuff we were getting in the early 2000s, right? Or even not the exact same stuff, just like anything on this level, we would have all been excited. But instead, we were getting like what Catwoman and Ben Affleck Daredevil, and they weren't hitting the right notes, right? These movies still hit the right notes. It's just that it does seem as if the movie industry, when it comes to superheroes, are following a similar path over and over again becomes a little predictable. They're do telling good stories for the most part, but it is a similar path, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do think that there is a little bit of fatigue. I think it's mostly due to studios not really spacing out things the way they should. I think we're getting too much at once. Like Black Adam came out in October, and then now it's March, and we got Shazam already. So I think that back in the early 2000s, it was kind of an event when a character would get their own movie. Like, I remember when the first X-Men movie came out and I saw the teaser for that, I was like, oh shit, they're making an X-Men movie. Now every fucking character has their own movie. Like, who was really asking for a Shazam movie? Really? I know I never even really thought of the character until we got him, but I do think that another factor in this, especially when it comes to DC, has to do with them announcing their plans for a reboot of the universe before the current universe was done and finished. So do you think that played a little bit of a factor into what we saw over the weekend with Shazam 2?
Oh yeah, I mean, since when James Gunn took over, it was pretty early after, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he say something along the lines about how that movie was not going to really impact the future, and they weren't sure about bringing Shazam back? But when you say something like that, however many months before a movie comes out, you're killing any kind of any kind of momentum it had, any kind. You're telling everybody in a world like today, like you're right, we're getting movies out the ass every 3 months, right? I know you just mentioned we got Shazam this week, and we're getting Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse over the summer, and that's only like 2 months away. So we get them all the time. So if you're telling a good amount of fans they don't have to go watch this one because it's not going to impact, and we're probably not done. We're probably done with this character, especially in today's world where movies like this are being released on HBO Max or Disney Plus shortly after. It's gonna hurt your opening day and your opening weekend. It's just a fact.
Yeah. I do think that like the decision to make Black Adam and Shazam two separate movies, I thought also killed both franchises a little bit. Like it's like doing a Batman movie and then a Joker movie, but then the actor who played the Joker refuses to let the character or the guy that's playing Batman be in the Joker movie is very weird. The situation that The Rock kind of created here, where he wanted Henry Cavill's Superman to basically be the replacement for Shazam, and that's not what comic book readers wanted. That's not even what general movie audiences wanted to see. They wanted to see Shazam and Black Adam fight. I think if you would have had that kind of battle in the second movie, the box office would have been completely different, especially with a name like The Rock attached to a sequel to a DC movie that was pretty well received when it came out, like 2018, 2019, when it did come out.
Hmm. Yeah, and then but let's get one thing straight: the people who ran the DCEU to start are the reason we're even talking about Shazam and Black Adam, because, like you said, nobody asked for that, and that's where it really I don't understand it, because we understand why Marvel started out with characters that were a little less talked about, that weren't the Spider-Man, that weren't the X-Men. Like, you understand why they only had the rights to certain characters. When the DCEU started, before it started, it's always had the rights to every freaking one of its characters. And it could have been doing super, like, it could have kept continue with Superman. They could have made a good Batman. They should have made a good Batman by now. But they could have had this DCEU thing all fleshed out a long ass time ago. It could have started with the Matt Reeves, Christopher Nolan one. So, like, it's just it's fascinating to look at the DCEU and think that, because they have great stories all over that place, right? They have great solo stories with their characters. They have great crises events, and they have a bunch of different universes too that they acknowledge, and they you do get to see some. So, like, I just don't understand why, when they had all of that, they've continuously just tried to do stuff with, I don't know, it's horrible decision making, and I'm
Yeah.
hoping it's going to be better with James Gunn starting soon.
Yeah. And it's not just DC. I know we pick on DC a lot. It's just kind of low hanging fruit with them. But Marvel in the past few years, I would say since Endgame, has not it's not mediocre content. It's definitely not to the par that we're used to when it comes to Marvel. Like, I think since Endgame did come out, I can count two really great movies that are kind of classics in my eyes, and that would be Wakanda Forever and No Way Home. All the
Mhm.
other movies are like, they're hit or miss. Like, Shang-Chi was a great movie, I thought, but Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which you haven't seen, so I won't talk about spoilers,
I still
I
got to see
thought
it.
was super disappointing. And the sole purpose of that movie was to introduce Kang, I thought. So I think Marvel has become more uh, attached to the bigger story at hand than really churning out movies that can stand alone.
But at the same time, we've raved about it's on this show about how much we liked Hawkeye, or how much we liked the Winter Soldier, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or WandaVision was great. And I mean, yeah, there was What If was a little weird, but it's still
Mm-hmm.
an entertaining watch. But like, yeah, I get that. Like, I think it's just that there's so much content, right? And some of it isn't entirely necessary. I will agree. Like, some of this stuff could have been a plot B in a TV show. Like, I mean, they could have easily merged Hawkeye with Captain America and taken on half of it if they were only going to have um, Mr. Wilson Fisk
Yeah, that
for
was
like a
just like
minute.
unnecessarily tacked on. It's like,
But
let's put the Kingpin in a Hawaiian shirt and then put him on the very last episode of this series. So
I can see where the fatigue comes in, though. Like, and especially for people who don't love this stuff as much. Like, if you, and that's the casual viewer, right? And the casual viewer is a pretty large chunk of the box office.
so what would you do differently if you're either one of these companies? Like, if you wanted audiences to be more hyped for these movies coming out, what strategy would you implement to kind of bring the magic back a little bit?
Whew, that's a hard one. I mean, you really got to fight. I don't know, man. Because like I just you can't just start ending characters now, right? You're
Yeah.
gonna have to use them. So I don't know if you just stop using them in TV shows, like, you end Moon Knight, you end Hawkeye, you end Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you end Loki, and they just become like side plots in movies, or they get their own movies, or they just don't really show up until like a big team up. Um, that's what they could do. But to me, I think Marvel's kind of running it the same way they run their comics, right? And with their comics, like, they know, like, we all know that you can tie almost every hero to every other hero through some sort of comic one way or another, right?
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily need to read the other comics. But you can read these big Avengers booklets, and they'll have 5 or 6 movies that are critical to it, or 5 or 6 books that are critical to it that you follow the plot line, and maybe a few other branch off through some of the side, like Spider-Man's going to have a few. So that's what Marvel's doing. I think it's hoping its movies become like its comic book counterparts, just a vast library of content. I just like you said, like that's going to be expensive to make, and you're going to need to have fans to stick around. So how do you do that? And I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah. I think Marvel's already doing it where we were getting like 2 or 3 TV shows a year,
Hmm.
maybe even 4, I think, like that first year when WandaVision came out. So they said we're doing 2 a year and that's it. And I really think that's a smart decision because like you look at the time where Miss Marvel ended and then She-Hulk began, you didn't really have a waiting period. You had like 2 weeks before those shows started. So this really lets characters kind of sit with you again, and I really do love that strategy. DC just needs to they just need to get these last Snyderverse connected movies out of there, and I think things will go a little more smoothly as soon as we know what this universe is going to do. Like when the Flash comes out and everything becomes clear, I think that will definitely feel a lot better about where we're going. Right now, it's just like a really weird situation. It's kind of like, you know, we're a pro football team and we fired our coach and then we already hired a new coach, but the coach that we just fired hasn't moved out of his office yet. That's like kind of what it is. So
Yeah,
we just got to get past the awkwardness, and I think we're going to be fine.
yeah, you're gonna get past the awkwardness. Um, it's just like the question is though. Also, Disney was purposely trying to get people on its app and using it daily and daily and daily, and Marvel gave that to them. They
Yeah,
gave them an edge over guys like Netflix and HBO Max and Hulu. It just did. And so is Disney going to be willing to say, okay, yeah, less content that's continuous? I don't know how that's going to work. Is HBO Max going to say that? But you're right. Like with DC, like we don't know what the hell's going to happen. I'd actually prefer for DC to take 2 years off. Like I don't need a DC movie every year. And if you
yeah,
take
me
two
either.
years to perfect your first movie for this universe, give us all a break, let people forget about what happened, and then introduce us to this new universe. That's what I would like from DC. Maybe not exactly 2 years, but you know what I mean. Like I want them to spend a considerable amount of time perfecting the start to this universe. They have all the things they need. There's no reason for it to fail.
Yeah. So absence makes the heart grow fonder, whatever that saying is. And that would be us
Exactly.
with DC. Imagine nothing for the next 2 years. And then boom, here comes Superman Reborn with James Gunn directing. We're going to be very, very hyped. But it's going to be interesting to see how the summer goes, especially with the box office and stuff like that. Anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
I know there's a lot of superhero content, but the stuff is good. I promise.
Go
Watch it.
watch everyone go watch Ghost Rider with Nicolas Cage, and then you'll be much happier of
Oh
where
yeah,
we are
no,
right
never
now.
mind. Don't do that. Like yeah, yeah, nothing like pre 2007.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we are in
I
the
mean, other
golden
than the
age.
other than the original Raimi movies and some of the X Men.
But if you really want to find out how good you have it, go watch Daredevil with Ben Affleck
Go watch
and
Catwoman.
report back. Go watch
Just
Catwoman. Yeah, there we go.
yeah, go watch
We'll
Catwoman.
have a not great time with that. But yeah, this has been a fun episode. We will
Absolutely.
be back next week. We are going to talk about John Wick, me and Ahmed will. Then we're eventually going to talk about Air with Ben Affleck in probably a better movie than the one we just mentioned. But I am Jeff. That's Gerald. It's been another edition of Box Office Quarterbacks. We'll see you guys very, very soon.